We start off with our usual prayer for student and teacher. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great vigor. May our study be illumined. We will not unnecessarily argue with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So this is labeled as question answer, spiritual seekers. And so if you have no questions, you have no answers. So I do have a few questions that were sent to me in text. I'll read out a question that I had here. It was sent to me today. He says, I have two questions and one assumption to be verified on the original wound and antidote for Enneagram 5. Now, not everybody has gone through that process, so I have to explain something here. The primary qualities that we need to cultivate in order to correct a mistaken vision of how we view the universe can be characterized as faith, hope, and love. This comes out also in Christian theology, the three virtues. That is, comes out as faith, hope, and charity, but we can say love because if you have no love, you have no charity. And so it seems that all of us can be divided into several groups, and we also have to bear in mind what we mean by the various parts of yoga. Various parts of yoga have one aim in mind, that is to free us from all our misery and pain and give us some kind of psychological settlement so that all the waves in the mind, instead of creating a disturbance, will all be nice and calm, with the idea that when the mind is calm, we can clearly see within the static reality that remains. So what's obscuring this vision? Well, the opposite of these virtues, a distrust or doubt. Doubt about what? Well, self-doubt, doubt about our abilities, doubt about the veracity of the world, doubt that the world is intrinsically running smoothly without our interference, the doubt that we can manage in a world which seems to be thoroughly demanding. Every second person we meet seems to have COVID. People are suffering physically. People are suffering emotionally, caught up in domestic issues, social issues. And then, of course, there's the big, big shadow of death lingering over everybody. And that then brings us to another thing. And that is that there's a fear behind everything. So there's doubt, but there's also fear. And so the fear can express itself as fear of feeling abandoned, fear of feeling a failure. You can identify your own personal fear, but all of it comes from the fear of death, the fear of self-annihilation. And so it's to do with life issues. So hope, what is hope? Hope, what is the opposite of that? Is feeling out of control or feeling that nothing was within our grasp, fearing that we have no meaning, feeling somehow alone, somehow feeling that there is a sense of abandonment and therefore a search to find a hopeful meaning somewhere. And without that, then there's no reason why we should pursue any path toward perfection. So all of these so far seem to be a useful thing in the sense that if you don't have doubt, you can't look for answers. If you have an absence of hope, then there's no urge toward a more hopeful situation such as perfection. And then finally, love. If you don't have love, you don't have generosity. But what is this thing called love? It's banded around so much in different languages and means sometimes something very superficial. So I would describe love as, at its highest, at its zenith, at its most generous, as a pouring out of giving with no conditions attached to it. I love you, whether you love me, who cares? I don't mind. But let me pour the love anyway. Now, all of these things we find in what we call nature, and the ancient philosophers registered this. So the spiritual process says, let me take God out from a foreign country, as it were, a foreign region, and put that entity inside as an inner controller. Then let me register it in everything. Let me see the God in all things. Then what is that thing that we call God? Well, a pouring entity that loves you unconditionally. Even that much is enough. And then to give some form to it, do you have any examples of such a thing? Yes, great saints, great rishis, great sages, great people in the past. And if you believe in the theory of reincarnation, great incarnations. This word that was made flesh and dwelt amongst us. And so we have Rama, Krishna, Buddha, Jesus. And we may also say for some devotees, Ram Krishna. So all of that indicates the highest level of perfection that humanity can unfold and attain. And Buddha was very close to explaining it. He didn't claim any special region for himself or any special status for himself. He just said, you see, Buddha, the one who is of enlightened buddhi, intellect, has had many, 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 many thousands and thousands of births. Therefore, just claiming him as an ordinary person, and yet if you see the structure of things physical and metaphysical, you'll come to a conclusion that there is a cosmic mind somewhere. And by tuning into that cosmic mind, so that nearness becomes oneness, you can see that it's the same thing. We can see a great person who is liberated, somebody who's fully illumined, beaming that everywhere. Then we get a clue what it's like to be a vessel, a shining vessel, always overflowing with love. What it's like to be always positive and hopeful. What it's like to always have trust. So how do we gain these qualities? Now we come to the 4 approaches that we call yogas. So clearly, if you have a hope issue, then where we get the hope, where we understand it, is we have to engage in what is called karma yoga. That is, we have to take all our activities and sanctify them. Instead of registering them in a secular way, we have to reorganize them as a kind of worship, as a kind of puja, as a kind of sacrifice, as a kind of delightful endeavor where we enjoy every single moment of our activity and we see and we delight in that. So Holy Mother, that we call Holy Mother Sharada Devi, said that if you want joy, if you want to keep and sustain cheerfulness, then work. Work sustains cheerfulness. But if you ask the average person who's laboring at a job, are you enjoying your job? Very often the answer is, I'd rather be doing something else. I always give the example of a keen golfer. So he loves to, on every Saturday, available Saturday, even when it's raining, to go out on the golf course and hit a small item, small ball, and increase his skill or her skill every weekend, and reminisce about it on a Monday when he goes to work and tells all his colleagues or her colleagues about the victories he had on the 18-hole golf course. Now, work then on a Monday is secondary. On a Tuesday, the memory is lingering. On a Wednesday, settling down to work. On a Thursday, thinking of the golf course. On a Friday, thinking of it more intensively. On Saturday and Sunday, doing what he really wants to do during those moments where he cannot be on the golf course. That creates anxiety. It also creates ill health. It creates tiredness. Because doing the work, that person is not mindful. They'd rather be on the golf course. So karma yoga is the antidote, actually, of what we might call or classify as an original wound that is characterized by this one word, hope. If you want to be hopeful, get up and do something, achieve something, do something worthwhile, feel good about it. Even if it's an egoistic way, do it. And then what would the antidote to faith be, or lack of faith? It would be trust. That requires a certain way of looking at things. And that means we have to be jnana yogis. That means we have to look at the world with a discerning eye. Because if we see the truthfulness of this, what this world is and what supplies, then we will have a full trust. There will be no wavering of a trust. And the antidote is there, but the trap is that lack of faith comes with an element of fear. Now, I have a definition of fear. Fear is faith in heredity. That means faith in all the XY chromosomes that went either side of your genetic makeup and resulted in individuality. But that is would be a shaky thing. So as to have the full trust not only in what is absolutely true, what is absolutely lasting, but also to see it in a pouring way, to see it manifesting through all the manifested universe. Knowing that the manifested variety is only a difference of name and form of that one single entity, that Vedanta we characterize as existence itself, Sat, and then knowledge itself or consciousness, Chit, and then Ananda. And if we look at these three kinds of bases, or these three descriptions in a very apologetic way, because the inference is they may be properties. No, they're not properties. They're substantial essences, the quintessence of that which remains when you take away time and space and motion and function. What is left? What is left is that single entity that is existence itself, not non-existence. And that pure existence infers, there being no other, it must also be pure bliss. And that being there, there's nothing more to know. Its existence shines through, and there's a base which is consciousness itself. There's very often an argument in materialistic thinking, atheistic materialistic thinking, that becomes reductionist and says, if there is a cause, an original cause, something like a singularity, it must inevitably be simple, not complex. And if it's simple, then it cannot be intelligent. They miss the understanding because they're thinking in terms of a relative divided world. No, if it is a unity of existence, if there's only one thing and no other, then it cannot be complex, but it cannot be simple either. It's beyond description. It transcends and defies every single kind of concept you can think of. That creates faith. And when I see everywhere that entity flowing through all the different varieties that we, in a compound way, call nature, then I know that I am, as an individual even if I fall into this mistake that I am an individual, and that's difficult to get out of, then naturally I'll be absolutely confident that things are working according to a certain divine rhythm, that things are manifesting well, that God made the world and saw that it was good, And there's no reason to see it as anything else. It's all in my favor. It's all the necessary environment to assist me in a growth toward realization. And then, so that is faith, that is hope, and then there is love, and we've dealt with love as well. So these three we see as encompassed or linked to the different varieties of approaches that we characterize as spirituality, namely bhakti yoga, that is engendering love, karma yoga, that has the effect of endorsing our hope, and ultimately jnana yoga, that gives us faith. Of course, there's a fourth, and that is meditation. We'll be exploring that on this coming weekend, the art of meditation, game of guiding thought, with practical examples of how to meditate. That will be common to everything. If you're not a theist, you can also meditate. If you're a theist, you can also meditate. Whatever you do, meditation is important. Why is it important? Because it gives you the real direct connection in the interior to that which is the unborn and the unchanging, the pure consciousness, that essential nature which is your own, but which somehow has been put at a foreign distant land. And we have to reconcile with it and find out our own true nature. And in doing that, we become perfect as our Father in heaven, and we are seeking the kingdom of heaven that lies within us. That's the essential journey we're all on. So let me go back to the question then. So he has two questions. He says, when we say hope is an original wound, is it losing hope to face the real world? Yes. Is it losing hope to face the real world? Well, if you believe that the world is against you, or if you believe that the world cannot be understood, and I want to give you an example, and this person is coming from the area of this example. If I have lost faith in or lost hope in myself, then I have to put myself in the context of the environment and understand it and fill up with that kind of understanding. And when I do that, then I feel I can cope with the world. That could be one strategy. So, second part goes like this. If this is so, what are some typical reasons for that? Now, let me see if I understand this question correctly. So, is it losing hope to face the real world? Well, what is the real world? What is reality? Reality, from a philosophical point of view or an understanding point of view, the reality is that one substance, looking like so many varieties, looking like waves, looking like particles, looking like formations of that, looking ultimately like relationships, looking like situations, some of them good, some of them awkward. So to find out what is the truth, Patanjali Yoga Sutras gives us 5 varieties of waves. And the first is right knowledge. Right knowledge means aligning oneself to the truth at all times. But the opposite of that is what we are normally steeped in, wrong knowledge, that misunderstanding of what the world is. So just to repeat oft-quoted positions, the world is not permanent. There are no permanent habitats. The body is not permanent. The mind is not permanent. There's always change, but it looks as if they're permanent. And for that reason, we get attached. We get attached to the world comprising of the physical, the things that the senses report. And we get attached to the senses themselves. And as a compound, we call that the body. Now, if we are to take all the energy that moves toward what we call attachment and reattach it to something else, to truth or to God, Sri Ramakrishna gives us 3 examples and says, let's combine all these energies from these examples. That is, somebody who has an attachment to the world and worldly things, somebody who is attached, or like a miser attached to money, or the attachment that a chaste wife has for the husband. If you take the energy of all these 3 and move it Godwards, you will get a vision of God in no time at all, very quickly, almost immediately. But to leave off one thing, for many people, for most people, will be to relinquish a sense of security. And another word for attachment is investing in security. And then redirect it into something that we know is secure. We cannot do that without some philosophical basis. In other words, understanding some kind of principle. What is it that is solid? What is it that is worthwhile? And then mobilizing all your positive energy in that direction. And most of us will have active energy. That is, we'll have to do something with our hands and our legs, working. And one thing I should mention in connection with Karma Yoga, physical work, at least somewhat, some part of physical work, really, in my personal opinion anyway, is necessary in Karma Yoga, mobilizing the body actively. Very often today, many jobs that we have in modern society are sedentary jobs. And for that reason, much illness and disease can come in. Because when you're in front of a computer all day, sometimes all night, then they say, and they must be right, they say many things. They say that you should get up at least every 30 minutes, walk around. Well, the consequences of not doing that is something like obesity. So this question says, losing hope to face the real world. No, the real world is how we value it correctly, not how we think it is. Very often you find that phrase, yes, all this philosophy and spiritual thing and meditation, but in the real world. And it's a complete opposite. It's so true that the Bhagavad Gita says that to the yogi, day is night and night is day, and all the opposites are there. Yes, complete opposite values will be there. Then the questioner goes on, assumptions to be verified, all right. As I have lost hope to cope up with, again, the real world, see, I have drawn myself to the internal world, filling it with knowledge, music, and other forms. Assuming that will help me to deal with the world, then dealing with emotions, actions, and conflicts. This is one particular strategy that is used by some people, that if I can emotionally detach myself from all the difficulties that create, as it were, an emotional reaction, or result at least in an emotional reaction, if I can withdraw myself into an inner world of thinking or being occupied with all kinds of things, in other words, burying my head in the sand with issues that might be critical or that might impinge on my sense of comfort, then that would be a formula. Yes, no, it's a wrong formula for that kind of person, because clearly it's a difficulty to do with hope. And the antidote for hope is to get out. If you want to use the phrase the real world, let's add relatively real world. To go out into the relative world, engage in it, and see the sanctity in it, more importantly. You know, every activity that is attributed to ourselves is wrongly attributed because we don't have any energy of our own. We don't have any independent resources. It looks like that. When we come up with a new idea, it looks like we have a creative faculty that is part and parcel of us. Instead of saying, no, we have a creative faculty, but it's not part and parcel of us. We are tapping into an eternal resource. There's an eternal reserve, an eternal stockpile, an eternal storehouse. And we have the capacity to make our requisition there. And we do it by continuously thinking about something, and that's enough to send coded messages. Come on, divine storehouse, please provide me with this answer, or please fulfill this need. And the infinite storehouse will do it. And it only requires a movement, a mobilization of thought.
Yeah, I've got something in relation to that, possibly. It just came to my mind. And I suppose it's something around the, it's not mathematical, but the balance between keeping very present to the moment and just being mindful of that. And then the other part is about good intentions of what you'd like to bring into your life so that it is more hopeful, like pictures or affirmations, or it's like a more active process in your internal world. And I suppose it's something around, is that getting in the way of just being present and being with the now and the beauty of God or in the now?
Yes, because in that now is a creative moment. There's a creative resource there. And so it might occur to you that something may be done in the future, something that is noble and good can be done in the future, a kind of inspiration, but it all occurs in the present moment, in the now, where when we are sufficiently attuned, we are attuned to that deep, poised area of creativity. And when we are doing something and the mind is not particularly occupied with anything in particular, and we're mulling over an issue or a problem not necessarily in a negative way, but something that is a problem in a puzzle. Puzzle might be a better word. Some puzzle, something that is much lighter than a problem, something that is we want to find out, we want to do something, and we leave it in a suspended area, if you like, in a superimposed area, or a superposition is the word from quantum physics. Leave it in God's area. Then while brushing the teeth or walking, it comes up as a creative idea. And also what helps is to have a blank sheet of paper so you can record it. Or some people carry a recorder, you can capture creative ideas. But it's all in the present moment. We sow in the future now. Our sowing is now. Our reaping is in the future. And it's not just the present moment. In this present moment is the fullness. That fullness we call our most beloved. That fullness we call God. That fullness is perfection. That fullness is our inherent nature. That fullness is the kingdom of heaven within us. In that fullness is the peace that passes all understanding. You know, it's like if you now tune into a radio station, or you're tuning into me here now. You know, it's now, isn't it? It's not a future moment.
But Swami, should there not be some, like, for example, I've taken on an allotment and I've been really visualizing like a lot of growth and variety and color, and that's giving me the kind of, it just is helping me to have, and I don't mean motivation, but it's just like it's like, and it's not a goal, but I kind of feel I want that in order to commit to the process. But that's getting in the way.
No, because it started off as a now moment, a moment of creativity that now flowers and grows, and so that's okay. No, it's let's compare it now to planting a garden. So every seed count as a present moment now. And if we are anxious about the flower's health, that's not going to assist the growth. So that kind of sowing, because you see, all of that is so much dampening of the growth process. Doubt is a dampening of it. Fear is a dampening of it. Temptation is a dampening of it. Desire is a dampening of it. So what we put in has to have two directions, as it were, a local direction and a long-term direction. Long-term direction is whatever action we do, whatever thought we put in right here, right now, if it is not put in for our long-term destination, namely our freedom, it's a waste. It's a delaying tactic. Secondly, we have to put in what is locally desirable, what is our current design, what we should be doing in this moment. So you see, a plant, a flower grows upwards. It doesn't grow downwards. It doesn't go back into the soil. It grows upwards, it develops, it opens. All good. But each flower will be individual. And the individuality has to be looked after. In other words, we all have our particular skills and talents, which are meant to be fitted in together. Technically, we call this swadharma. There's something you can do, nobody else can do. Nobody else should do. And cultivate that well and use the best of all your talents and abilities. Allow that to flower nicely. But within that will be a useful upward thrust toward perfection. Both are happening, and both have to be attended to. But one correlates to the other, by the way. One is the means toward the other. Does that make sense?
Yes, Swami, thank you. That really helps. Thank you.
So we can finish off then. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.